This podcast contains explicit content and discussions related to real-life criminal activities, including violence and sensitive topics. Listener discretion is advised. The host's opinions are personal and are not representative of any individuals or organizations involved in the cases. We strive for accuracy, but if you've missed anything, please let us know. Thank you for listening. Ever wondered how someone convinced themselves that they are a victim of demonic possession and committed murders and many attempted murders because an ancient demon through a dog commanded them to? Well, there's a lot to unpack here. In today's case, get ready to dive into the bizarre and downright weird mind of today's serial killer, David Berkowitz, also known as the Son of Sam.
David Berkowitz was born as Richard David Falco on June 1st, 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. His biological mother, Elizabeth Betty Broder, being unable to bear the burden of a child, gave him away. Elizabeth grew up in a poor family and was working as a waitress. She married Tony Falco, an Italian-American, in 1936. After just 4 years into the marriage, Tony left her for another woman.
Richard was adopted by Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz, and the couple were hardware store retailers, and they had no children of their own. They changed Richard's name by reversing it and putting his middle name as his first name and gave him their last name. It was alleged that David's childhood was pretty troubled. Despite being quite smart, he quickly gave up on studies and resorted to crimes such as petty larceny or theft and started fires. He had previously suffered head injuries as a child. Neighbors and close relatives stated that he was a difficult child, rude, spoiled, and a bully. His parents had consulted at least one psychotherapist for his misbehavior, which went unpunished by any legal intervention or mentioned in his school records.
David's adoptive mother, Pearl, later died of breast cancer when he was just 14 years old. And he hated being at home because of his dislike for his father's second wife. He attended high school living with his father and college away from home. In 1971, David joined the United States Army at the age of 17 and served at Fort Knox, along with an infantry division from South Korea. After being honorably discharged in June 1974, he found his biological mother and she disclosed the details of his birth. This information disturbed David and he was angry at the long list of unwilling father figures in his life. Forensic anthropologist, who is a person who researches human societies and culture, Elliot Layden later claimed that David's discovery of his birth details was him realizing that his life had begun horribly and that truly shattered his identity. His communication with his birth mother later fell apart and he only kept in touch with his adoptive sister, Rosalind.
He attended Bronx Community College for a year and then in 1976 went on to work as a driver for a taxi company. He had several other non-professional jobs and during the time of his first arrest, he was a letter sorter for the US Postal Service. David claimed that he committed his first crime by stabbing two women with a hunting knife in Co-op City on Christmas Eve in 1975. The first was a Hispanic woman whose identity was never confirmed by the police. Sadly, she passed away from her injuries. The second one, a 15-year-old high school sophomore, Michelle Foreman, who was hospitalized for a week after being stabbed 6 times. Imagine you're just going about your normal day when a man just comes up to you and stabs you out of nowhere, without any motive, just pure rage. He had not been suspected of these crimes, and he later moved to an apartment in Yonkers. The thing is, Michelle tried to recover to the best of her ability so she could provide helpful information, but there really wasn't anything because this had just been a completely random attack. After he moved to Yonkers, he laid low for a while, and then a few months later decided to try out something again, but this time with a .44 caliber pistol.
So the first ever shooting was in Pelham Bay, a neighborhood of the Bronx. At 1:10 a.m. on 29th July 1976, David was stalking around the parking lot. Johnny Valenti, 19 at the time, and her friend Donna Loria, 18, were sitting in Johnny's car just going about their evening at Peach Trees, a New Rochelle nightclub. Donna opened the door to leave and noticed a man hurrying towards her. Startled and probably annoyed why this creep was approaching her in such a menacing way, Donna said something along the lines of, "Now, what is this?" before the man took a gun out of a paper bag and crouched, positioning one elbow on his knee, and with both hands he fired the gun at her, resulting in Donna dying immediately after getting hit. Then, a panicked Johnny started running away and David shot her in the thigh. Since it was quite a busy parking lot and people might come because of the commotion, he let Johnny run away and put the revolver back into the paper bag and just walked away.
Johnny survived and said that she did not recognize her friend's killer. She described him to be a white male, presumably in his 30s, pale, about 5'8", roughly 178 centimeters tall, and weighing at least 200 pounds. He had short, dark, curly hair in a mod style. This exact description was made by Donna's father, who claimed to have seen the same man in a yellow car in the neighborhood. Neighbors also gave reports about an unfamiliar yellow car in the area just hours before the shooting. Years later, in 1993, David, while imprisoned, admitted to journalist Mary Terry that he had indeed shot Donna Loria and Johnny Valenti. David found his next victim shortly after, on the 23rd of October 1976, in a secluded area of Flushing, Queens, next to Bound Park. Carl De Niro, a security guard who was 20 at the time, and Rosemary Keenan, an 18-year-old college student at Queens College.
They were casually sitting in Rosemary's car when suddenly the windows shattered. Carl later said that he felt that the car had exploded. Rosemary quickly started the car and began to speed away, trying to get as far away as possible. What they hadn't realized was that a man had been shooting at them from a distance. When they were safe distance away, Rosemary looked over and saw that her boyfriend was bleeding from the head, a bullet to his head. However, Rosemary had only superficial injuries from the broken glass. Carl later had to get a steel plate to fix a portion of his broken skull. Neither of them claimed to have seen their attacker. Police investigators determined that the bullets in Rosemary's car belonged to a .44 caliber, but since it was so highly deformed, they couldn't link it to a particular weapon. Police later speculated that the shooter had probably mistaken Carl for a woman because he had shoulder-length hair and slightly feminine features.
Because of Rosemary's dad being a 20-year-old veteran police detective in the New York City Police Department, police tried to put together both the shootings, trying to find a pattern of the killer, to see whether both the shootings were linked. But they didn't associate them to be linked because both were in different districts and were investigated by different precincts. Just a month later, David decided to strike again. On the midnight of 27 November 1976, a 16-year-old Donna DiMazzi and 18-year-old Joanne Lomino were walking home from a movie night and they were chatting on Joanne's porch when a man dressed in military fatigues approached them and started asking them for directions. He got as far as asking them how to get somewhere before taking out a revolver and shooting each of his victims once, and they fell to the ground. Then he proceeded to fire several shots at the house before running away. A neighbor heard the gunshots and rushed out of his house and reported that he had seen a blonde man running away with a pistol in his left hand. Donna was shot in the neck, but it wasn't life-threatening. Joanne, however, had been hit in the back and was seriously injured and later was rendered paraplegic.
Now, if you're wondering what paraplegic means, it is being paralyzed from the waist down. Then just a few months later, at 12:40 a.m. on January 30th, 1977, Secretary Christine Freund, who was 26 at the time, and her fiancé, bartender John DL, 30 at the time, were sitting in John's car near the Forest Hills Lure Station in Queens, planning to go to a dance hall after having watched the movie Rocky for the first time. A panicked John began to drive away after 3 gunshots penetrated the car. He suffered minor superficial injuries while Christine was shot twice and died several hours later in the hospital. Neither of them had seen their attacker. Police then finally acknowledged that the previous incidents were similar to the engaged couple shootings and that the crime might be connected. All of the victims were struck with .44 bullets, and the shooter often targeted women with long dark hair. NYPD Sergeant Richard Conlon said that the police were leaning towards a connection in all these cases. Sketches were released of the Loria Valenti suspect and the blonde Lomino Damasi suspect. Conlon also added that they were looking for possibly 2 suspects and not one.
At 7:30 p.m. on March 8, 1977, 20-year-old Columbia University student Virginia Voskerichian was walking home from school when she was confronted by an armed man. She lived about a block from where Christine Freund was shot. Desperately trying to defend herself, Virginia lifted her textbooks to cover her, but the makeshift shield was penetrated and the bullet struck her head and killed her. On March 10, 1977, in a press conference, NYPD officials and Mayor Abraham Beam declared that the same .44 Bulldog revolver had fired shots that killed Donna Loria and Virginia Voskerichian. Official documents were released that the same gun had been used in the shootings. The crimes were discussed by the local media every day, so basically, the whole world started circulating these reports and trying to get the attention of as many people as possible.
At 3 a.m. on April 17, 1977, 20-year-old Alexander Esau, a tow truck operator, and 18-year-old Valentina Soriani, a Lehman College student who was an aspiring actress and a model, were sitting in Alexander's brother's car on the Hutchinson River Parkway service road in Bronx, just a block from Valentina's house and a few blocks from the scene of the Loria Valenti shooting. A resident who lived nearby heard 4 shots and called the police. Valentina, who was sitting in the driver's seat, was shot once and Alexander twice, both of them in the head. Valentina died on the scene and Alexander a few hours later in the hospital without being able to describe his attacker. Police said that the weapon used for the crime was the same as the one in earlier shootings. In 1993, David Berkowitz confirmed that he was the shooter.
However, what was different this time on the crime scene was a handwritten letter in block capitals with a few lowercase letters addressed to NYPD Captain Joseph Borelli. In this letter, David addressed himself as the son of Sam. So where this name originated from is his neighbor's dog. In the 1970s, David had a neighbor by the name Sam Carr and a dog named Harvey. Now, David claimed that the dog was possessed with an ancient demon called Sam and was compelling him to commit these murders and acts of violence. The letter contained descriptions of his determination to continue his work and taunted the police for their fruitless efforts to capture him. The letter read, "I am deeply hurt by you calling me a Vemon hater. I am not, but I am a monster. I am the son of Sam. I am a little brat. When Father Sam gets drunk, he gets mean. He beats his family. Sometimes he ties me up to the back of the house. Other times he locks me up in the garage. David loves to drink blood. Sam loves to drink blood. Go out and kill," commands Father Sam. Behind our house, some rest. Mostly young, raped and slaughtered. Their blood drained, just bones now. Papa Sam keeps me locked in the attic too. I can't get out, but I look out the attic window and watch the world go by. I feel like an outsider. I'm on a different wavelength than everybody else, programmed to kill. However, to stop me, you must kill me. Attention, all police. Shoot me first. Shoot to kill or else. Keep out of my way or you will die.
Papa Sam is old now. He needs some blood to preserve his youth. He has had too many heart attacks. Too many heart attacks. Ugh, me hoot, it hurts, sonny boy. I miss my pretty princess most of all. She's resting in Our Lady's house, but I'll see her soon. I am the monster, Beelzebub, the chubby behemoth. I love to hunt, prowling the streets looking for fair game, tasty meat. The women of queens are the prettiest of all. I must be the water they drink. I live for the hunt, my life. Blood for Papa. Mr. Borelli, sir, I don't want to kill any more. No, sir. No more, but I must. Honor thy father. I want to make love to the world. I love people. I don't belong on earth. Return me to Yahoos. To the people of Queens, I love you. I want to wish all of you a happy Easter. May God bless you in this life and in the next, and for now I say goodbye and good night. Police, let me haunt you with these words. I'll be back. I'll be back. To be interpreted as bang, 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 bank, bang, Yours in murder, Mr. Monster. Police suspected that the person who wrote the letter must be familiar with Scottish English because the phrase "me hoot it hurts, sonny boy" was the Scottish version of "my heart it hurts, sonny boy." The police also gave a possible explanation of the shooter blaming the dark-haired nurse for his father's death due to the "too many heart attacks" phrase, and this kind of makes sense because of his victims, the fact that Donna was a medical technician and Johnny was studying to be a nurse.
After consulting with several psychiatrists, police released the suspect's psychological profile on May 26, 1977. He was described as neurotic, who most likely had paranoid schizophrenia, and convinced himself that he was a victim of demonic possession. So on May 30, 1977, Daily News columnist Jimmy Breslin received a handwritten note from someone who claimed to be the .44 caliber killer. Now this is quite a long letter, so I'll be giving a brief summary of it. The letter begins with the alleged killer writing a strange sort of greeting. It had advanced from the first letter he wrote. It seemed more professional, kind of like he had taken it to a studio to be written. He wrote that he appreciated Jimmy's interest in the .44 caliber killings. In the letter, he asked Jimmy Breslin what he would have for the 29th of July. He wrote that he did not care for publicity and not to forget about Donna Lauria, and goes on to tell that she was a very sweet girl, but Sam was a thirsty lad and that he would not stop killing until he received his fill of blood.
He says that he was still there and like a spirit roaming in the night. He then taunted the detectives by wishing them the best of luck and to keep them digging, drive on, think positive, get off your butts, knock on coffins, etc. He promised that when he was captured, he would buy all the guys working on the case a pair of shoes if he had the money. Signed, Son of Sam. See, what's infuriating about this letter is the way he talks about Donna Lauria. It's almost as if reminding them what he is capable of in the same way he wrote what Jimmy would have for the 29th of July. He taunts the police working on the case and establishes himself as someone who is superior to them, someone who is formidable. Since all of his victims were long dark-haired women, thousands of women in New York City went out of their way to cut their hair and dye it in fear of becoming the .44 caliber killer's next victim. On 26 July 1977, Salvatore Lupo, a mechanic's helper, who was 20 at the time, and 17-year-old Judy Placido, a recent high school graduate, had left the Eliphas nightclub in Bayside, Queens, and were sitting in Salvatore's car around 3 a.m. when 3 gunshots were fired through the vehicle.
Salvatore was shot in the right forearm, while Judy was shot in the right temple, shoulder, and the back of the neck. Both the victims miraculously survived their injuries. Strangely, Salvatore said that they had been discussing the Son of Sam case just moments before the shooting. Neither of them actually saw their attacker, but reported a tall, dark-haired man in a leisure suit running from the area in a car which had a partial license plate number. With the first anniversary of the .44 caliber killer approaching, the police placed a dragnet, sort of like a barrier, preventing criminals from going past the borders that surpass the hunting grounds in Queens and the Bronx. However, the next and final .44 caliber shooting happened in Brooklyn. On July 31, 1977, Secretary Stacy Moskowitz and clothing salesman Robert Violante, both 20 at the time, were sitting in Robert's car, parked under a streetlight near a city park in Bath Beach on their first date. They were kissing when a man approached them within 3 feet of the passenger side of the car and fired 4 rounds, hitting both the victims in the head before he escaped into the park. Robert lost his left eye, and Stacy, being the only blonde victim of the killer, died from her injuries.
That night, Detective John Filotico woke up to a call that told him to report to the 10th Homicide Division at the 60th Precinct Station House in Coney Island. He was given 2 weeks to work on the Stacy and Robert case as a normal murder investigation. If he couldn't solve it within that time frame, it would be given to the Son of Sam task force. Cecilia Davis, a woman who lived near the Stacy Robert shooting, was walking her dog when she saw patrol officer Michael Cantaneo ticketing a car that was parked near a fire hydrant. Just moments after the traffic police had left, Cecilia felt a man walking past her, studying her with interest. She felt concerned because he looked as if he was holding some sort of dark object in his hand. She quickly ran home, only to hear shots fired behind her in the street. She remained silent about this incident for 4 days until she finally contacted police, who closely checked every car that was ticketed in the area that night. David Berkowitz's yellow 1970 Ford Galaxy was one of the cars they investigated.
On the 9th of August 1977, NYPD detective James Justice called the Yonkers Police Department to ask them to schedule an interview with David. The dispatcher who answered James's call was Wheat Carr, daughter of Sam Carr and the sister of David's alleged cult confederates, John and Michael Carr. As soon as James mentioned the name, Wheat replied that she knew him and he lived right behind her. She also told him that David had shot and wounded their black Labrador retriever named Harvey, and that Harvey was her father's dog. When James heard the name Sam, he had a very good hunch that David was indeed the right culprit that they had been looking for. James asked Yonkers police for help tracking down David. The Yonkers department already had suspicions on David. The next day, on 10th of August 1977, police investigated his car, which was parked outside his apartment building. They saw a gun in the back seat, searched the entire car, and found a duffel bag filled with ammunition, maps of the crime scenes, and a threatening letter addressed to Timothy Dowd, the inspector of the Son of Sam task force.
They decided to wait for David to leave his apartment instead of confronting him, which would probably result in a violent conflict. They also waited for a warrant to search the apartment, which they feared that their search may be challenged in court. The main reason why they searched the vehicle was based on the visible handgun in the backseat, although the possession of a gun was legal and required no permit. The warrant had still not arrived when, at 10 p.m., David left his apartment building and entered his car. Detective John Filotico approached the driver's side of the car and pointed his gun to David's temple, while Detective Sergeant William Gardella pointed his gun from the passenger's side. A paper bag containing a .44 caliber revolver was found next to David in the car. Then, David flatly stated, "Well, you got me." The detective remembered the big, inexplicable smile on David's face. So, Detective John asked him, "Now that I've got you, who have I got?" To which David replied in a soft, almost sweet voice, "You know." "No, I don't," the detective replied. "I'm Sam," he turned his head and said. "Sam who?" "Sam, David Berkowitz." Police searched David's apartment and found it a mess with satanic graffiti on the walls. They found that he had kept 3 stenographers' books, which were nearly full with hundreds of arsons claimed to have committed through New York City. The number may be over 1,400. During questioning, he claimed that his neighbor's dog was the reason he killed all those girls because the dog demanded the blood of pretty young girls. At a press conference later, in February 1979, he admitted that his claims of demonic possession were a hoax. He later told the psychiatrist David Abrahamson that he killed because he wanted to get revenge on the world that rejected and hurt him.
His lawyers advised him to plead not guilty by reason of insanity, but he refused. He pleaded guilty to all the shootings on May 8, 1978. On June 12, 1978, he was sentenced to 25 years to life for each murder. He was eligible for parole in 25 years. In 1979, someone tried to kill David by slashing the left side of his neck from the front to the back, resulting in 50 stitches to close the wound. He refused to tell who had attempted to kill him and said that he was grateful because it brought a sense of justice, or in his own words, the punishment he deserves. Many sources believe that he didn't act alone, and the claims of him being in a cult and working with cult members has not been proved. In 1987, he became an evangelical Christian in prison. He said that he is no longer to be referred to as the son of Sam, but the son of hope. He continues to preach the gospel and counsels troubled inmates. He has published a few books, but under the Son of Sam Act, he cannot receive any profits from his works. He is now 71 years old and will be eligible for parole this year in May. Also, the Son of Sam Act came into effect because of him to stop any sort of criminals from profiting off of their crime.
Yes, that is actually right.
People often believe that serial killers can be reformed, but according to me, once a serial killer, always a serial killer, and this is purely my opinion. And I honestly don't understand how he can consider himself so righteous and just preach on about the gospel when what he did is an unforgivable crime.
I can't imagine how it must be for the families of the bereaved to find peace when the man that killed their sons and daughters completed his college degree and publishes books and believes that God forgave him after he committed the most heinous crimes known to man. I hate the fact that he can live in peace for the rest of his days after murdering dozens of innocents and thinking that he has the right to preach to other people about God's love. This case honestly drained me and left me pondering for quite a while.
So I just wanted to mention that it's kind of a weird turn of events. Like it came full circle when the daughter of the man who owned the dog came into the picture, right?
How did it take a weird turn of events?
It was like it wasn't planned or something, right? They did not know who he was.
Yeah.
She was just there, like investigating or something.
Yeah, that
right?
was kind of like a coincidence, you know?
That was a weird coincidence. It did not have to happen.
Yeah.
It was not planned. And because of her, they were able to
Kind of get
the son of Sam part. Like,
yeah.
that is kind of crazy. Like,
That is how like the detective figured out that he was indeed who he was, you know?
yeah, so that was such a weird coincidence, but it all worked out for well in the end.
Yes. Anyways, that is it for today's case. Let us know what you guys think. Should he be excused for his acts after claiming to have attained forgiveness from God, becoming a Christian and counseling other inmates? Let us know in the comments and please feel free to suggest more cases to cover next.
I'm Kay.
And I'm V.
And this has been Rotten Minds. See you in the next episode.